This week in games, Call of Duty makes massive changes to its campaign structure. The Xbox 360 marketplace is getting shut down. Final Fantasy producer wishes there was just one platform to develop for. And the Embracer $2 billion failed deal mystery is finally solved. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 161. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Hello,
Viewers watching.
Connor. You're a jackass. You're a full-blown dickhead. All right.
You know what? To those who aren't behind the scenes, we started it, and then apparently I messed him up on his intro, so we had to restart it.
All right,
and now here we go.
So as fans of if you watch us on YouTube or on Twitch, you know that Connor often likes to start out the videos mocking my intros and mimicking me. And this week, you know what? It just got to me a little bit. I wasn't expecting it, and it made me chuckle internally, and then I got in my own head about it, and you know, he's being a dickhead about it. All right, you know.
There's nothing wrong with doing pre-planned intros. I just like to follow it along to see if the byproduct of you messing up as a result of that is not intentional.
Yes.
It's just what happens.
Yes.
So, sorry, Tab.
I will say we may have a little bit of internet connection issues. It cut into what Connor was saying there just a little bit, but we got it for the most part. But we may have some internet connection issues this week, but it's okay. We're gonna barrel through it. We're gonna get through it, and it's all gonna be fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, this is the Two Penny Gamescast. Each week, me and Connor, we come to you with the nerdy news you need to know concerning the video game industry. We each come to you with two topics, 2 pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. You can watch this show over at youtube.com/@2pennygames or mainstream podcast services of your choice. Just look up the Two Penny Gamescast and you will find us right there. You can also watch us live every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Time at twitch.tv/2pennygames, where we go live and we record all of our weekly podcasts, usually. And for your live viewing pleasure, come join us in the chat and talk to us about what you'd like to talk about during the week. Leave a comment down below about maybe some topics that we missed, some topics you'd like to include in the show, or just general gaming questions or fun little what-ifs that are creeping into your minds. Let us know what your 2 pennies are, why don't you? Connor, how's your week been, my friend?
It's been good. We got some good news, both you and I, confirmed for the apartment that we were trying to get. So eventually we'll have to tolerate each other a lot more than we do each week.
a lot more.
Yeah.
And hopefully that means we can get out of the digital bubble that we've been in for well over a year now and develop into into person to person. We can bounce off of each other and have some live chemistry.
You know, the channel grew a lot more after while we were on our, separation bit, doing it through webcams. So a lot of people who watch this probably don't remember the time where we were just sitting across from one another, just talking. I feel like that was a while ago.
It feels like a while ago, right? It was quite a while ago. And yeah, like none of the cool like graphics or like moving video or cool layouts, none of that was there. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with all these assets, or you know what? Maybe we'll still be in separate rooms. Who knows? You know?
Yeah.
It's 100% gonna have to just be. We'll figure it out when we get in the space, and then once we're there, we'll decipher how it's gonna go down.
Exactly.
Anyways, Connor, let's get right into our first topic of the day. Your first penny. Bring it. Take it away for me, my friend.
Well, we got a VGC article here from Chris Scullion, a classic case of the 2 penny source. The Xbox 360 store is closing next year. Players will still be able to play their purchased games and buy backwards compatible titles. In a new post on the official Xbox Wire blog, it was announced that the ability to buy new games, DLC, and other entertainment content from the Xbox 360 store will end on July 29th, 2024. This specifically refers to the ability to buy content directly through the Xbox 360 console and the ability to buy content from the Xbox 360 marketplace site. It does not affect the ability to buy backwards compatible Xbox 360 games and DLC on the Xbox One or Xbox Series X stores, XS stores, which will continue to be available. Microsoft stresses that while the Xbox 360 will close down on July 29, 2024, players using their Xbox 360 consoles after this date will still be able to use all their previously purchased Xbox 360 games and DLC. It also notes that if players have deleted a game that they purchased, they will still be able to re-download it. Players will still be able to play these games online as long as their online servers are still supported by the publisher and can still save their game progress to the cloud. Microsoft points out that Microsoft Movies and TV app will no longer work on the Xbox 360 on the same date, meaning movies and TV shows purchased through the service will no longer be viewable on Xbox 360 consoles after July 29th, 2024. These movies and TV shows will still be a part of the user's library, however, and can still be viewed on the Movies and TV app on PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series XS. While many hundreds of Xbox 360 games are backwards compatible, and will still be available on the Xbox One and Xbox Series XS stores, the closure will mean that some digital-only Xbox 360 games that were never made backwards compatible will essentially disappear. And I know, Tavin, this has been a bigger point for you on this podcast, bringing up how we could, save game titles so they don't just fall by the way. Fortunately, we're seeing the repercussions of not backing games up and having other ways to play them than just on a console that's at any point in time can just go away, like the Xbox 360 is going away. So that's very unfortunate, as I would say is the kind of the final nail in the coffin of the Xbox 360. Obviously, it's very outdated. It's a console that pretty much started a lot of what we expect from modern consoles. But, those were years ago. People have moved on. So I can't blame them too much for closing down the Xbox 360 store. I just wish they would have done something more to prevent certain games that are, not accessible anywhere else from just disappearing entirely. Because they could have been a little bit more active in trying to save these things. And maybe they still will. Since it is a little bit ways off, maybe they'll, look at the games that aren't going to be, transferred over to the new Xboxes. Or maybe they'll just let them die because they don't care. But it is a sad farewell to one of my personal favorite consoles that's ever been released, and the one that really got me into a lot of modern gaming.
Yeah, so there's a lot of takes you could have on this. My take is it's always unfortunate whenever we lose an outlet, lose an access to a game. The Xbox 360 is very important for online marketplaces with video games, digital libraries. Very important in developing what is a digital library, a digital marketplace today. You think of Xbox Live Gold and games with gold and the summer game thing that they used to do back in the day. I forget the official title of it. There was a lot of really great growth for indie developers to get their game on a console and be published on a console for millions of gamers to play. And a lot of these games are going to disappear. They're going to be gone. Lost to the wind, lost to time, never, ever to be seen or played from again, which is unfortunate. However, Xbox, in terms of console marketplaces, is leading the pack in backwards compatibility, leading the pack in bringing old games back to the forefront, and trying their best to have the best policies for game preservation as possible. I believe Phil Spencer has said in the past that game preservation is a concern of his, and that he really wants to be able to always have a way for these old games to be played and to be enjoyed and to be sort of cataloged in some way to where we can always go back and revisit them. It's just impossible to do for the 360 marketplace. Listen, it's probably a very tiny fraction of gamers that are still actively using their 360s, actively using the 360 store. This is plenty of time, ahead of time, well over a year in advance to be like, hey, we're shutting this down. but it's going to be, a while from now. Well, not exactly over a year, a little less than a year. But, we've got a little less than a year to buy what we need to buy and have that available. The best parts about this are you can still use your stuff. You can still download your stuff. Sure, it sucks that your TVs and your TV shows and your movies and all these things won't work on your 360. But if you don't have a better platform to watch your TVs and movies and that you're buying digitally than a Xbox 360, it's just time for an update, man. Like you need to put away some funds and get yourself any other platform that has come out in the last 10 years.
If you want to keep playing the new games that come out, because I think people, if they're still really sticking to the Xbox 360, are probably those
I'm
level
speaking.
gamers.
I'm sorry. I'm speaking specifically for the TV and movies. Like,
Oh, okay.
if your main way of watching this stuff is still on your
Yeah.
360, that's a problem that you have, not for them to deal with. But
Yeah.
you can still, like, if I understand this right, you can still use your 360. You can still download stuff from the 360 catalog and library and play your games on there. It's just that you can't buy any new stuff on there, which is unfortunate. But it is what it is.
I was gonna say something, but I can't quite remember what it was.
Well, there you go. I do want to just emphasize that Xbox is doing it the right way here, as right as you probably can do it here, where it's like, hey, we're giving you plenty of heads up. There's still accessibility here to get your games that you have digitally that maybe aren't backwards compatible yet or will never be backwards compatible. But you think of old games that really defined the Xbox 360 marketplace and how if it's not ported to a new console or if it's not backwards compatible, then that game is gone and there's no way to go back and revisit it.
One thing I do need to stress, you talked about it a second ago, but the Xbox 360, particularly the store, was almost single-handedly responsible for the rise of indies. Obviously, they always existed, but they got as popular as they did because Xbox Arcade. I remember there was that weird transitionary period where people would say, oh, this is an arcade game because of Xbox, and after a while you had to say, okay, well, it's an indie.
This is good for a downloadable game. Remember that?
Yes.
This is good for a little an arcade game or whatever. Or this is a cool little $5 game. And then eventually that led to us being like, oh no, these are just games. They can be just as good, if not better, than some of the big stuff that comes out.
So that was a nice turnaround because sometimes I remember last year when we did our top 10 games, most of yours was indie titles, whereas this year you had said it's kind of changing, but it really just is all about the games individually, not whether they're AAA titles or whether they're indie titles. A good game is a good game, and Xbox is responsible for that. So that's not to say that that's a reason why they should keep the Xbox store around, because obviously closing it after a certain length of time is understandable. Aside from the issue of losing some games, some of these things just always end up going by the wayside, and the store is the next thing. But its impact can't be denied. It'll always exist. It's a legacy.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you got to think about Fez and Limbo and there was another one that was on the tip of my tongue and I've lost it now.
Braid?
Braid was one of them. Super Meat Boy was what I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
All of these classic games that obviously every single one that I've just named you can get on other platforms or on updated hardware. But these games were essential for developing sort of the culture of the indie market that we see today. So and it would not have grown to the rate it had if not for the 360 and the 360 marketplace. So salute to the Xbox 360. Excited to see what comes from the future. Hoping that we'll get some way to restore some of these old games. But there's thousands of games on that marketplace, and let's be honest, you don't need to play all of them. You really don't. But
you can't play all of them.
That's a life work. But remember when Gerard the Completionist went very viral when Nintendo had announced that they were closing the DS and Wii U stores, I think, or the Wii stores or whatever. And he went through and bought every single game and downloaded every single game and archived them all and like had every piece of like DLC and just any type of purchasable content. Just bought it all, downloaded it all, and like has like hundreds of hard drives of the shit. It's commendable stuff. I don't know if it can be done on the 360, but commendable for sure. Connor, moving on to our second topic of the day, our my first penny. Call of Duty is finally trying something new, or at least that's what they want us to believe here. I've got a GameSpot article from Eddie McCook. Eddie
That sounds
McCook.
like good.
I don't know. I'm sorry, Eddie, if I butchered your name. I apologize. Modern Warfare 3 has a new style of campaign missions. Here's how they work. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 has been officially announced. In one addition to the formula this year are what's called open combat missions for the campaign. But what are these and how do they work? Here's everything we know so far about open combat missions in Modern Warfare 3. In addition to the more cinematic, linear, and focused missions that fans have come to know and expect from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, linear and focused missions that fans have come to know and expect from Call of Duty. Modern Warfare 3 has open combat missions that give players more freedom. Players will have numerous additional choices for how to complete a mission, Activision said in a blog post. Quote, for example, if you prefer to use stealth techniques, you may wish to undertake an OCM with a lights-out approach using night vision goggles and suppressed weapons and complete your objectives without your adversaries knowing you were even there, the company said. Quote, however, if loud explosions and reckless abandon are part of your repertoire, strap extra armor plates onto your torso and hit those targets head on. Modern Warfare 3's open combat missions will feature a number of vehicles that players can use. Additionally, there will be a variety of tactical and lethal equipment available, and players can pick and choose to suit their preferences. In terms of playable space in open combat missions, Activision said that there will be a sizable landscape for these missions. This will allow players to approach objectives in different ways. Quote, you can truly play how you want to play, and open combat missions will support it. Combat creative director David Swinson said in an interview with Xbox that Call of Duty's trademark missions will still be in Modern Warfare 3. These open combat missions will not replace them. Quote, Call of Duty's campaigns are known for these epic cinematic storytelling, narrative-driven missions that take the audience on a thrill ride, and Modern Warfare 3 has all of that, Swinson said. But we've also added the open combat missions to provide opportunities for you to tackle a mission objective, how you want to do it according to your playstyle. Quote, these aren't side missions. They are campaign missions woven seamlessly into the story, and they offer you more choices than you've ever had before. If you want to sneak through the entire level, you can. There are also vehicles, cleverly hidden loot boxes, and weapon crates on these open combat missions. Some of them contain kill streaks, which we are calling armaments, since you don't need to streak any kills to earn them. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 launches on November 10th, and a multiplayer beta will be held before that. So, Connor, something new. That's fun. That's refreshing.
You know, I was hearing you listen. I was listening to you read this story.
Yes.
Right? And I just kept thinking to myself, this kind of beat me down, this story. Saying to myself, I wish Battlefield 3 took off. I wish we still had that experience. I missed that.
It did take off. What do you mean? It was huge.
No, then it changed, and then they just play differently now, and they suck now. And it's just like I
they
wish
do suck
those.
now. Or
Yeah.
if you're like me, you've always thought Battlefield sucked.
Yeah, but you're wrong about that. It didn't always suck. But you know,
let me run for 30 minutes to get to a battlefield to get shot by a sniper who's been camping the whole game, and now I gotta spawn back and do it again.
Those were vehicle maps, first of all. Second of all, they had a lot of that not happen in some maps and whatnot. So, you know, kill yourself. But
Jesus!
Yeah, that was a little harsh. A little bit harsh. And I'm being harsh for no reason at all, because as you said, this is just like an interesting, cool way to revitalize the Modern Warfare, or I should say Call of Duty campaign experience. Because I haven't played a Call of Duty game in quite some time now. But I remember, the stories could be pretty interesting, entertaining.
For sure.
But it felt very samey. There was very little challenge. Enemies went down super quickly. They're basically just ragdolls to push to the side. And then you would sometimes get a really difficult. You would sometimes do the higher difficulty levels, and they would just kind of be, you get taken down in, 4 shots from some undescribed location. So there was really never a way for me to really enjoy it all that much because it was just so straightforward and, it got bland quickly. But this is a good way to, change up the formula. I kind of was thinking Far Cry when I was reading this, but it seems to be a lot more focused, whereas this Far Cry kind of gets too open to the point where there's just a bunch of samey stuff to do, just like all other past Far Cry games. But this one actually seems like, okay, you have a specific objective to do, approach it how you best see fit, while also mingling in that with the old Call of Duty campaign missions that people have come to know and love. So this is really an interesting way to do it. Maybe it'll make this Call of Duty stand out more from some of its predecessors in recent years.
Yeah, no, I'm right there alongside you. It feels, from the way they describe it here, it sounds like they've sort of crafted individual levels that will have a lot of different opportunities and interesting little paths that you can take in each level and so forth, which is really exciting. It feels a little more artisanal, as opposed to as opposed to say like a Far Cry or even like a Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain, where like you saw a lot of like copy and paste type scenarios going on and not a lot of like handcrafted level design type things happening. So this does sound a lot more interesting. Obviously, it's not going to be the whole campaign. If I were to guess, it's going to be maybe 3 to 5 of these levels. Feels about right for an average campaign length. Probably 3, maybe 4. And that's actually really, really exciting in my opinion. I think this will develop us into hopefully sort of a new breadth of fresh air when it comes to Call of Duty and so forth, and then I'm sure after, this acquisition goes through and Call of Duty, becomes a first party game and only working for, well, they've already said Call of Duty's coming everywhere for the next 10 years or whatever. But I'm just curious to see if it takes off, and if it will be something that will become a staple to the campaigns as opposed to the one-time gimmickry that often these Call of Duty games do. But I like how intrinsic to the design of the game it is. Like, you can't just have these levels and like be like, oh, like it won't feel like a gimmick. It'll feel like really cool levels is where I'm basically going at with that.
Yeah. Artisanal is a good word that you use there. It's just it fine tuning that it needed.
Yeah, yeah, and it just feels like it feels like something fresh. It feels like something fun. It's almost enough to make me go, oh, maybe I do want to try this one out. I won't, but because but it is interesting, and I'm very excited to see how the fandom reacts to it and if it becomes a new thing. You know what I'm really excited for? I'm really excited for like the TikToks that'll come out from it. It'll be like, hey, did you know in this level you can, jump over this barrier, slide under this railway, and you can find this really special gun that you can use to take out the whole thing. Or maybe somewhere hidden in the level is like a joke weapon that will let you shoot flaming ducks out of your gun or something, or turn enemies into sheeps, like a sheepinator, a la like Ratchet and Clank or something. Like, Call of Duty can have some fun here, to sort of amp up the replay value of these missions specifically. So I'm excited to see where this will lead.
And I'm right there alongside you.
Yeah, and hopefully somewhere fun.
I'm not gonna play it either.
No. Connor, here's a question for you. Is it possible for a Call of Duty game to re-enter conversation for Game of the Year?
Yeah, it's always possible. With these combat missions, it is an interesting, unique way to change up the formula. But I think, a lot, like as you said, it's possibly only going to be like 3-5 missions that are going to be like that. Other than that, it's reading like it's going to be just the usual Call of Duty campaign, which obviously has its lures to it, but it doesn't do a lot to make people think this is one of the best games of the year. Not to mention the multiplayer aspect of it, which is just as well. It's bigger than the campaign element of it. I don't see how they're really going to revitalize that. But to my knowledge, they did take a break, didn't they, last year from releasing a Call of Duty? Or is that some
No,
other time?
no, a studio got skipped is what
Okay.
happened. So we had Modern Warfare 2 last year, and now
Mm.
we're getting 3 immediately after that. So yeah, they're kind of restructuring how the release schedule for Call of Duty's work, and maybe it'll eventually develop to a point to where it won't be a yearly thing anymore. And they'll take breaks in between to like sort of develop it in ways that people find more substantial. But yeah, I mean, like, to me, this could really lay the groundwork for something really, really cool for Call of Duty. It's wild to me that one of gaming's biggest franchises, if not the biggest franchise, often the highest selling game of the year, is nowhere near conversation for actual game of the year, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because Call of Duty games are good games. Like, they're not like cheap little like whatever games. Like, they're not like double A, like we're just gonna shit this out type game. It's not like your Saints Rows, when Saints Row came back. Like, these games are quality games, and they for the most part function when you put them in. There's some other like stuff that's kind of gross about it, like the microtransactions and sort of the battle passes and what Warzone is. It kind of feels kind of gross and greedy and so forth. But Call of Duty has always been a very standard blueprint for a very successful first-person shooter game. And it's just crazy to me that we just kind of take it for granted of how good these games are, and go, nah, but I don't want to play it because it's too samey from the last one. Don't get me wrong, it is too samey from the last one. I burnt out a Call of Duty years ago, and I have no intention of really going back. But it's crazy to me how like this much production value can be put in it. This like much budget can go into it, and it can sell this many copies, and nobody cares.
I equate it to, you may not like this comparison, to Marvel movies. A lot of them are just, it's kind of changed nowadays, but they're well-made movies. You can look at them and just say like, oh yeah, it's fun. The acting is good. It's not like terrible or anything like that. The special effects are good, but it's very samey from what you were always expecting when you go and sit down and watch a Marvel movie, and it doesn't really do many things to stand out from itself. So it just kind of, you say, okay, that's good. And then you go on and, watch something like Oppenheimer or Dune or something that actually gets considered for Best Picture at the Oscars, because those stick in people's mind a lot more than, that Marvel movie that came out this year. And Call of Duty is that version of it. I think they've, like I said, Marvel kind of seems like they've dropped in quality in recent years, whereas, Call of Duty, they do just consistently, as you said, make good quality games. They just don't have enough oomph to carry them forward, which with this new, open combat missions, they might be able to change that. I think they'd be better off changing it by taking breaks instead of just trying to say, we got to get it out this year. We got to get our Call of Duty out and get our green, which unfortunately I really do think is greedy. It's greediness is what promotes that, because they know, okay, we could make this new game that really makes people think that this is one of the best Call of Duties. But the people who make these decisions, they don't think of it from an artistic perspective. They think of it more from a how much money will this make perspective. And for something like Call of Duty, which will never not make money, make massive returns every single year, there's not much incentive to do that. Though I think it would really be better for the title as a whole. But, maybe, like you said, maybe this one will lay the groundwork, and they, people really like it. And so the take from it is, okay, what if we just take a second to make a more extensive game with our next Call of Duty? Maybe take a year to, make it, hell, maybe even 2 years, and then release a fine-tuned product that sells a bunch of copies and just makes them more money than they have ever seen from a Call of Duty title before. That's kind of an idealistic scenario, though. I think they're just going to, even if these combat missions are really successful and really gets people re-interested in the format of a Call of Duty campaign, it's just going to be like, okay, let's do that again next year. And people will, flock to buy it, because they're never going to be hurting for money. That's for sure.
You know what? You make a lot of great points there. you hit the nail on the head there, Connor. And you're quite right in a lot of it. You and I have been around the block for a cool minute now. We're 25, 26 years old. Not old by any means, but we're not children playing with children's toys anymore. And we've been around long enough to remember the original Modern Warfare trilogy and when those games were coming out and so forth. Boy, oh boy, can I tell you, when the new trailer had the no Russian reference in it, and I was like, why are we doing this in 3? What is going on with, I don't even know what's happening in this timeline anymore. And I'm just interested to see like what changes are being made. I saw a lot of really great changes are happening. A lot of like, the mini map is going back to what it used to be, where like if you fire your gun, you show up on the map. Which I think like used to just be like on like the compass readout at the top now is the new style of things. So they look to be like, it sounds like they're listening and they're hearing what the fan base wants, and they're trying to appease some of that while doing something new, while still appealing to or appeasing their corporate overlords. So,
Yep.
let's see what Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 does. I'm very excited to find out. Moving on to topic number 3, Connor, your second penny of the day, your final penny of the day. Go ahead and take it away, my good friend.
Got another VGC, Video Games Chronicle article. Final Fantasy 16 producer wishes there was only one game platform. Naoki Yoshida thinks it would be better for developers and players alike. According to an IGN translation of an interview, this is Tom Ivan, don't know if I said that. According to an IGN translation of an interview with a Taiwanese YouTube channel, Yoshida said it would be better for developers and players alike if there weren't competing console platforms. Quote, game platforms, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I wish there was only one. He reportedly said, it would be better for both the developers and the players, end quote. Sony and Microsoft have both secured a number of third-party titles as console exclusives over the years. One of the most notable examples of this is the PlayStation makers' ties with Square Enix, which in recent years have seen Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy XVI excluded from Xbox. Square Enix announced last month that Final Fantasy XIV, which Yoshida directed, will finally be released for Xbox consoles next year following a decade of PlayStation console exclusivity. Final Fantasy XVI was released for PS5 in June, and Square Enix has confirmed that it will remain exclusive to Sony's console for at least the remainder of this calendar year. Prior to the game's release, Yoshida said he'd like to see a PC version of the game released eventually. Quote, first of all, it is true that Final Fantasy XVI is a 6-month limited time exclusive on the PS5 platform, he told the Japanese PlayStation blog. However, it is a completely different story that the PC version will be released in half a year. I will make it clear, but the PC version will not come out in half a year. This is because we spend a lot of time and money optimizing the PS5 platform to deliver the best gaming experience. Of course, I would like to release a PC version at some point so that everyone can play as many games as possible. However, even if we start optimizing the PC version after the PS5 version comes out, we won't be able to optimize it in half a year. So it won't come out in a short span of half a year. I would like to release it eventually, and I think I will, but I am not at that stage where I can say when. End quote. I sympathize with this because I imagine it's already very difficult to make a console game and also have it on PC. And we've constantly seen issues, especially on PC, of that prioritization leading to, when the PC version comes out, having a bunch of issues. The Last of Us Part 2, The Last of Us Part 2 or The Last of Us Remake?
Part 1, the remake.
Yes. Yeah. Part 1, the remake, Jedi Survivor. Those are some recent examples of games that just released horribly to the PC. And it's a difficult thing to do, to optimize it. And so I understand that on the console side of things, it would also be extensively easier to just have it all on one console, rather than also having to deal with PlayStation and Xbox's bullshit. Now, I understand both companies exist. They have consoles of their own, and they want to make money and somewhat compete against one another, even though the idea of the console war is kind of fallen by the wayside, thankfully. But it still remains that there are two different consoles, so you are going to have issues with game developers having to make them for all of them, which just... Games are already hard to make. We've seen the amount of time it makes to come out with a game increase to sometimes 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that people are constantly wanting really minute details, like, oh, you can destroy these fruits individually by shooting them with a gun, or these blades of grass part for when you move. That already tacks on the workload. This just does so more, and it's clearly a guy who has an interest in bringing this game that he makes to everybody. He's the director of Final Fantasy XIV. He's, that's his child basically, and he has a whole group of people that can't play it because they own an Xbox. And it's a really what's the word I'm looking for? A useless way to prevent people from playing games. Just one company wanted to make profits over another in the console space. So his words ring a lot more true than you might think at a first glance, because we're so used to just having multiple consoles out at the same time when we ideally could just have one.
Yeah, I mean it's all an archaic just form of way to view how this business works, and unfortunately it's still prevalent, and unfortunately it's not going anywhere. Yoshida's saying the quiet part out loud is what he's doing, and the simple truth of it is that we would be getting better games that run better out of the box, more complete, with less glitches, and they'd probably be prettier, and they would probably be like advancing faster if it was all for one platform and we just got singular upgrades to that. Now, we can sit here and pick our favorites, but the simple truth is that if you say that games should just all be made for PC and nothing else, you're wrong. You're actually the scum of the earth. And in fact, you need to just finally admit that video games play better on a controller. They are better on a console. I don't want to log on to my computer to play a video game. You know what I want to do? I want to kick back on my couch. I'm going to chill out in my bed and, knock out some great levels made by some phenomenal developers. And sitting here, let me play with my mouse and keyboard. Look at this thing right here. This is how the ultimate form of gaming is right here with this thing. Let me clickety clack. Oh, I got too many buttons, so many keybinds. Oh no, what's my new graphic driver setting set to? Oh, none of that has any. We don't have any of those problems over on the PlayStations, over on the Xboxes, and none on the Nintendo Switches. Hey, guess what? Game of the year 2023, probably going to be Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Can't play that motherfucker on a PC. Just saying.
You can't play it on a PS5 either.
Yeah, but it's one box. It's the three. I got 3 boxes in my entertainment system. That's it. I just pick up a controller and I start playing or whatever. My girlfriend got mad at me the other day because I was bouncing between Disney Illusion Island and I think Shadow of the Colossus, whatever I was playing on PlayStation at the time. And I had both controllers in the bed, and they're both white and black controllers. And she's like, why do you have so many controllers in the bed right now? And because in her mind, it's like the same thing, because they're just both white and black, and they look the same. And I go, I'm just playing too many games right now, is what the truth is.
You can take, frankly, first of all, before we go forward, you could take your racist
It's not racist!
Out of here. You can take your racist viewpoints out of here. Console, gamer. You see, I'm in the right. I'm not on side PC or side console. I am Buddha. I am equal. I have reached equilibrium. I don't know really the tenets of Buddhism.
Buddha.
I don't know. That probably makes no actual sense, but that's what I'm going with. PC, you can play so many. Can you emulate Lord of the Rings: The Third Age on a PS5?
Wouldn't need to.
You would need to, because it's a good game. You can do that on PC. I can play Silent Hill 2 on PC. Can't do that on PS5. Both of them have perfect.
But we probably could if there was only a PlayStation. If it was just the PlayStation and that was it, we probably could, Connor.
You think Konami would be like, we got to get Silent Hill and 1, 2, and 3 to the masses because that's what we like doing? No, they wouldn't do that. They would not do that. PC has to hold down that fort. On the modding scene, they have to hold down that fort. It's how the world works.
On a serious note, to get us back on topic here.
Yeah.
This is unfortunately, the one of the many bad reasons to be participating in a capitalist society is all these companies want money. There's only 3 of them in the world, and they're all making everything worse for all of us to increase their profit ends and hurt the other guy. How can we get more money for our platform and this, that, and the third? And it's just like, all right, well, now a whole legion of gamers get screwed because PlayStation wanted Final Fantasy exclusivity, and now a whole nother legion gets screwed because a year and a half later the PC port comes out and it's not as good, or vice versa. Hey, I'll say it right now. I don't think the Baldur's Gate 3 launch on PlayStation 5 is going to be good. I think it's going to have a lot of problems when it happens. The PC version has a lot of problems, from what I hear, but in what ways will those translate? I don't know. We'll have to see when the game launches. And I think honestly, by the end of it all, like we as gamers would be in a better spot. Developers and producers would be in a better spot. It's only the corpos that benefit from the current business model that we have now. Are you going to tell me that devs are going to get lazy and complacent and not put out the best art that they can? No, they're artists. They want to put out the best product that they can. They want to have new ideas and evolve and change the landscape of things. That's just how art works. And we as gamers will gravitate to that because we want what's new. We want the new trend, the new exciting game genre or game mode or something like that. Why do you think battle royales are popular right now? Because they're newer. And in 10 years it's going to be something else, and that's going to be cool too. The only way that it breeds competition and all that, that only functions if your end goal is money.
And it is.
Yeah. So
I will say the only caveat I could see with there only being one platform is the issue of a monopoly, which would just have, obviously the one console that determines how things run. But at that same exact time, we have already deals going on with Microsoft acquiring Obsidian and not Obsidian. What's the Bethesda? ZeniMax.
There you go.
Acquiring ZeniMax and now keeping things like Elder Scrolls on Xbox, or at least that's the worry. They're not going to be
also
on
owns Obsidian, by the way.
Yeah, they do now. Yeah. But ZeniMax is the bigger title, and that now they own Activision Blizzard. Through these acquisitions, you can see them lock down the space already, and you kind of just alleviate that problem if you only have one console, because everyone's they're going to be like, okay, we'll have it all on the Xmash 5 or whatever the hell they call it.
Yeah,
and that becomes a non-issue at that point. A whole aspect of the video games industry that we've covered a lot on this show, unfortunately. Talking about you, Bethesda, Activision, milk drinkers.
Speaking of money, Connor.
Yes.
Topic number 4. My final penny of the day. Hey, we finally know what went down with that Embracer $2 billion fall through. We are pulling a Eurogamer article by, where's the byline? There we go. Matt Wales. Embracer's collapsed $2 billion, quote, major strategic partnership was reportedly with Saudi Arabia-funded Savi Games. A new report from Axios has shed fresh light on Embracer's group's mysterious $2 billion, quote, major strategic partnership, which collapsed spectacularly back in May, causing its shares to drop by 40% and sending the company into cost-cutting mode. At the time, Embracer, the enormous umbrella corporation which owns more than 100 studios, including Borderlands developer Gearbox, publishing groups such as THQ Nordic, Koch Media, Koch, it's Koch, right?
Coke.
Is it Coke?
Yeah, Coke. Like the Koch brothers.
Okay.
One of them's dead.
Okay, great. And Saber Interactive and franchises such as Tomb Raider and Deus Ex explained it had reached a verbal commitment in October of 2022 that would have resulted in more than $2 billion in contracted development revenue over a period of 6 years. However, at the 11th hour, Embracer said it received a negative outcome from the counterparty, while Embracer declined to confirm who its proposed partner was at the time of its announcement. A new report from Axios, citing, quote, 4 sources familiar with the deal, claims it was the Saudi government-funded Savi Games Group, the gaming-focused arm of the Saudi investment fund, set up by the hugely controversial Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Axios says the proposed deal would have seen $2 billion being invested in development and publishing of games from Embracer, but adds its sources were less than certain about why Savi walked away. Savi, of course, acquired a 840 million euro stake in Embracer prior to the collapsed deal, giving it approximately 8.1% of shares. Excuse me. And 5.4% of votes in the company. A move Embracer boss Lars Windfors was quick to defend, in light of the controversy surrounding Saudi investment in Western companies, insisting the decision was not taken lightly. Saudi Arabia and Prince Mohammed bin Salman, in particular, had been blamed by the CIA for the assassination of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Khashoggi. And his rule had seen the country keep its notoriously poor human rights record, with homosexuality still criminalized, with punishments ranging from floggings to the death penalty. The country's goal of investing 142 billion reals, or 32 billion euros, in the video game industry as part of the wider initiative to diversify its economy away from oil has been Saudi acquire similar chunks of developing, including EA, Activision Blizzard, Take-Two Interactive, Capcom, and Nintendo. Since Embracer shared news of its collapsed $2 billion in May, it has announced a comprehensive restructuring program involving job cuts and studio closures. It is also pledged to exploit its rights to Lord of the Rings and Hobbit in a very significant fashion.
You know,
I love that last sentence for you, Connor. That's great. Can't wait for Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit to be exploited very significantly.
You know what? That at least they're being like honest with who they are, using the right language. Because it sounds so fake if they're like, we want to allow players to experience more of the Lord of the Rings universe. No, exploiting is.
Well, that's what the marketing is going to be for whatever comes next.
Yes, of course it is.
But it's going to be more golems.
Yes, it is. I hope not. But you know, that aside, listen, I know Saudi Arabia gets a lot of flack, but hey, they let women drive. So frankly, they're pretty ahead of the rest of the entire world.
Don't do that. Yeah, don't do that.
Sure, they might bomb innocent civilians in Yemen, killing children, babies, and such. You know, they might obviously treat people within their own society, even women, despite the fact that they can drive, with death penalties and beatings and horrible, horrible things. But hey, video games, right? They play video games. They're like us, gamers.
We play video games. They play video games.
They're so cool. They're so cool. I love
a certain percentage of gamers on the internet also hate women.
Yes, exactly. See, there's a lot of cross. There's a lot of cross. You know.
Okay. Move on, please.
Yeah, move on. I hope the only thing that I hope is that it hurt Embracer Group. That's funny to me. That's a cool thing. So that's nice. I know it probably didn't, and it made no effect.
Only the developers under Embracer are going to suffer from this.
Yes, true. But at the same time, so are the people, to some degree, who make these deals and have them fall through. I hope the Savvy Games also suffered as well. I hope everybody in the story suffered in some way, shape, or form. But whether they did or not, I don't know. Yeah, I don't like either of these people. Sad, the big $1 billion group didn't get another $1 billion thing to make them more billions of dollars. Very sad. Don't you think it's sad?
Just full savage anarchist Connor came out there for a second. What the hell was that?
I will reiterate it because I've said it before. I hate it so much because Saudi Arabia does all these bad things.
Oh, they're terrible.
And they're horrible. The U.S. government also can be very terrible.
Oh, we suck too.
Yeah, the difference is this is a company that is funded by the Saudi Arabian government, money from the Savvy Games and their games department, you know, whatever the hell they're doing over there. And all the acquisitions they've made in recent years goes directly back to Saudi Arabia, who do these bad things. In the U.S.,
this Prince Mohammed that sucks.
Yes, yeah, he very much sucks. He definitely killed that journalist, by the way. It's pretty much, you know, what's the word? Unrequited? No.
Undisputed?
Unanimous. Undisputed, yes, that he did do that. Unfortunately, this probably doesn't really affect them all that much. And let me finish my original thought. U.S. companies, they are just companies based in the United States. Anything that the U.S. government does that's bad, anything they fund that you don't want to fund, you aren't doing so by buying video games. But unfortunately, this has kind of changed with Saudi Arabia getting their greedy little claws in all these other places to try and give themselves a better image and to make themselves more money. So I do not like this story because it just reminds me that they're a thing.
I mean, it could, you know, lead to a darker version of, you know, how like, you'll see a lot of investment from Chinese governments in Hollywood and so forth, to sort of branch out and to appeal to Chinese audiences more. That's really all in just the search for money, not so much maybe a political gain or so forth. This could be that same thing where you start seeing game development from Embracer that is appealing to Saudi Arabia markets because they're so controlled by their right now no partnership, but they're 8.1% of shares belong to Savi Games, and so you could see a huge investment from Embracer Group to sort of market their games to this country, which again would only benefit the people we don't really like, or people who we see as evil people who are committing these horrible human rights violations and horrible atrocities. And just something about that, it just feels gross and we don't really like that. And every game you buy from them does go to that pocket. But at the same time, Embracer is not an insignificant publisher in this space right now. Embracer has bought their way into being one of the major players in the space. So it's not like we can just straight up ignore every game that Embracer publishes, because that would put so many developers out of work if we did that. And these are just people who were working for a company. Their company got bought, and now they work for another company, So it's a very tricky situation. I would agree with you, Connor, that this is probably the best case scenario as opposed to what probably could have happened. When we first covered this story of the $2 billion lost deal or whatever, we were sitting here like spitballing at the wall. We're like, I don't know, Apple, Amazon, like maybe like a Ubisoft or something. Like, I don't know, that it doesn't feel right coming from an EA or a Ubisoft, but who knows? It does feel right coming from an Apple, from a Amazon, something like that. But to hear it said it's Savi Games. Oh, okay. Well, then this is probably this is probably the least problematic ending that we could have gotten to the story.
It is. I mean, it always can be worse. They lost. We don't have to deal with the moral issue of having to, realize that we're buying games that help go to this government that we don't like. So,
indeed,
I didn't say I didn't like any part of this story, but I guess that is the bright side of things. It is just one less company they have their hands on.
We as the consumer don't have to feel as conflicted as what this is happening. Now, granted, every Embracer game you do buy does fund Saudi Arabia because they still own stock, but
that's unfortunately a parcel of life. Like, it's like when you buy a T-shirt, like this one. I know where this was made. I know who was probably taken advantage of to make it in poorer countries. And that's just a sad thing that can be changed if we just crack the hammer down on the companies that take advantage of like outsourcing jobs to places that have, cheaper labor. But you can't just avoid, you can't just not buy shirts. Or only, especially with shirts, because they can get super expensive if they're made in the United States, because they're usually designer ones. You can get stupid sometimes.
Just burn it down. Tear it all down. Make it a new one. We don't need the system that we have right now. It's only a matter of time before the people realize that. The companies are not on your side. The billionaires are not your friends.
On the bright side, most people already realize that.
You would think, Connor. You would think. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the news this week. We are going to transition into our review for Baldur's Gate 3. That's right. Connor's been playing it, and we are going to talk about it. I'm very excited to hear what he has to say, but we need to make a cut real quick because I got to change a couple things behind the scenes. So stay with us. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to a 2-Penny Games review, this time for Baldur's Gate 3. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hello again.
Hello, Connor. You have been playing yourself some Baldur's Gate 3. You are our lead reviewer on this, my friend. Let's cut right to the fucking chase here, man. This thing has been huge. It's been a bit of a surprise, honestly. We always knew it was going to be good. We didn't know it was going to make the splash that it's made recently. Currently the year's highest rated game on Metacritic. Currently crazy sales numbers. Everybody's excited for the PlayStation 5 release. Everybody's excited for the game on PC right now. It's a great time. Connor, what is your review of Baldur's Gate 3?
Well, to preface it, I played this in early access. It says right now I have on Steam 76 hours playing the game. Now, a lot of that was early access, playing the beginning parts over and over and over and over again because I ultimately decided, okay, I want to experience the game in its entirety rather than just do the first part of the game and then, play it again when the game inevitably comes out. So, this new time that I played since it's come out, I put in 32 hours. I have played this game a lot, and I am in the first act still. It is a very long game, and I can already say with absolute certainty that it is a masterpiece. It is not only a masterpiece, but one of the best games ever made. It is in that tier, undoubtedly. And what this game is it's a video game version of Dungeons and Dragons. Baldur's Gate is based off of Dungeons and Dragons. 3 is no exception. If you've ever played a Larian Studios game, which they're most known for Divinity, Original Sin 1 and 2, games that I personally haven't played, but they follow the, RPG, tactical elements where you click and, you tell your characters where to go using the mouse in the open world, and you do the same thing with the combat. But since I don't really have, experience with Larian games, what Baldur's Gate 3 does is, being based off D&D, you have a set number of actions. You have actions you can take. One of them being an action, which comprises of being able to do things like dash, double your movement speed. That's what that does. Attack with your main, weapon. Attack with a ranged weapon. Cast spells. Do special attacks. You also have bonus actions that allow you to do certain spells. Like, for example, one's called Misty Step, which allows you to transfer yourself to some other part of the map. You can do that and then do some other large damaging spell after the fact. You can shove people to kind of push them off cliffs, increase your movement speed by jumping, and doing other specific class actions that change depending on which character you're playing. Then you also have reactions, which allow you to do things like opportunity attacks when someone leaves your melee range to do an attack against them, or if you have the counterspell spell, use it to counter other spells. So it's very much, it has a really good divide between combat, which you do a lot of, and RPG elements, which you do a lot of. Both the combat elements are fun for basically anybody. It's not a super intensive game. You have your typical, easy, normal, hard, and it doesn't take a lot of skill. You just have to think, which everybody has the capability to do. The other aspect of it, the RPG elements, are so expansive. The reason why I say this is one of the greatest games is because you're able to start up a new game and have a completely different race, a completely different class, a completely different subclass, and treat that character entirely different in subsequent playthroughs, and do the variety of quests that the game has to offer in different ways. And to show you how dramatic it is, there's a group you find in the beginning of the game. Does the typical RPG thing of you're going to save them. You can do that, or you can massacre every single person in that entire complex and get rewarded for it. The game allows that as an option, and both of them are extremely viable. As a matter of fact, it actually allows you to get an extra party member. So that, right off the bat, shows how different each playthrough can be. If you want to be, an evil son of a bitch, or be a holy paladin, like myself, as you can see in the gameplay footage.
Which, by the way, we had some issues getting the normal B-roll footage uploaded to YouTube like normal. So we're streaming it through Discord, and it looks like Connor recorded it on a potato as well. So
Yes.
It's just real choppy here, but we'll try and fix it for the TikTok review. Follow us on TikTok.
And it's not choppy on my recorded image over here. I now realize it runs way smoother. The game does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
So all right, so we've lost it to the Discord. The Discord has we're doing what we can here, guys. we're a 3-man operation with jobs and school, and we got a lot of things going on.
And separated to boot. But getting back on track, it has an interesting story centered around you trying to prevent a parasite from turning you into a freakish monster. But something else is strange. It's not, things aren't normal. Well, they're already not normal, but they're even less normal than they otherwise would have been. And that gets you introduced to a series of characters, your party members, who all have such, strong personalities. They each are very different. They have their own backstory and story that goes alongside the main campaign and is available to do with it as you see fit. You can even, kill some of your player characters. You know, you don't necessarily have to have them around. Don't advise that at all. Certain story elements can allow you to get rid of your party members. So it does those more traditional, or rather more modern RPG elements of, you know, having the companion relationships, which change depending on the dialogue options you use and whatnot. Dialogue options and a lot of the things you do in this game, from, you know, doing certain actions like unlocking a chest to sweet talking one of your companions, is based around the classic D&D system of rolling a 20-sided dice, adding modifiers that are determined based off your class, your race, you know, certain abilities you choose as you level up, to get a roll that has to be another, you know, challenging roll to either succeed or fail in whatever it is you're trying to do. Really, a lot of the greatness of it comes from just how interesting everything is. You know, you're always, I'm playing through the game, doing my choices that pertain to my character, because I like to, it really allows you to create your character and use the wide breadth of options that you're given to make your guy. I'm a holy, you know, righteous paladin. I met somebody who could have, you know, provided me aid. I killed them because they were evil, and I do not tolerate evil. I am a good person. But at the same time, I could, you know, not do that. Be very self-interested and go so far as to say evil. Yeah, and I will do so in subsequent playthroughs. And I'm, like I said, only in the first act, and I've completed basic. I like to think I've completed everything the first act has to offer so far, but honestly, I can't even be completely sure. Probably not. Probably missing a huge chunk of things. I'll point out the negatives. They're small.
All right, bring them out. Bring them out.
There are some mechanical issues. Some of them are related just to the fact that it's a pretty big game. It's an extensive game. You're able to, you know, like I said, do so many things with it in each subsequent playthrough, and that has led to sometimes I've seen less of this because they've been pretty good with the updates. You see them almost every other day or every 3 days. So some issues have kind of gone by the wayside, but the big one that really hampered me, which I thankfully one of those I haven't experienced in a while, is it would turn, because it's turn-based. You roll a dice, and, you know, the game rolls a dice, and your initiative for who goes in combat is determined that way. Sometimes it would go to another, you know, particularly my character's turn, my player character's turn. I reworded that. My party member's turn, and sometimes the bar that allows you to do all the actions would not pop up, and you could not end your turn. So right then and there, your combat encounter was ruined. Go to your last save, which thankfully many autosaves. So, and you quickly realize that you need to save a lot. Anybody that's going to get this game based off this review, save. It is a very important thing to do. Do not hold back. But that would occasionally used to happen. Never fun. I realized I can kind of, you know, work around this issue, but I mentioned you can jump. You jump a lot in this game to get over certain environmental damages or reach certain hard to, you know, get locations. And when you activate the jump button, it'll tell you if you could reach the location you're trying to jump to or not. Now, it kind of isn't really, you know, make a big emphasis of this, especially in situations where it messes up, where it'll show that you have to move to get to the location where you can now jump. I wouldn't see that, so I would say, oh, I'm going to jump over here because I can make it. And then we'd walk into, like, magma and then, like, get taken down, which sucks.
So what you're saying is instead of walking and jumping over lava rivers, you're walking to a spot where then you can activate the ability to jump and roll to determine how successful your jump is being, but you as a gamer just want to run over and jump.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right, great.
You should be careful of that. One of those common issues that happens, because magma is very specific, which is not, it's very rare, but what's not rare are traps, which when that happens with traps, they can have a chain reaction that is immense, to say the least. Because one thing that can easily happen in this game, and that, honestly, I'm kind of moving away from my criticisms. Those are my big ones. That and also some choppiness, some animation issues here and there, but they're so minuscule.
To kind of put a cap on that. Big things are glitches, graphical UI, just general gameplay glitches happening more often than we would like, and the game is, to put it in a better term, the game is too D&D and not enough video game sometimes.
No. I'm sorry if I came across that way, because the cool thing they do is not everything is exactly like D&D. They change certain things to allow it to be better for a, you know, video game experience.
Okay.
So you have a pack that has a bunch of items in it that you collect throughout the world. There's tons of things to collect: cool magical items, camp supplies, alchemical ingredients to make potions on the go. But one of the things during combat, you can't just like take out a weapon out of your backpack and change them on the fly. You have to use an action to do that. And usually in D&D, you have to do that for all the different items that are, tucked away in your bag that aren't on your immediate person. You have complete access to all of the stuff in your backpack, and even if your ally is somewhere else, you can give them items that they can use. And it takes no extra action. It doesn't impede gameplay, and that really makes it go a lot smoother. Not to mention, certain actions are, like shove, I believe, is an action in D&D, but it's a bonus action here because even though it's extremely useful in pushing people off ledges, pushing them into elemental attacks or environmental damage
hazards.
Areas, hazards. For the most part, it just makes gameplay more fun because a shove is a very big make or break moment, and you could be wasting multiple attacks or some big damaging spell to just shove somebody, which might not work because once again, being D&D, it's very involved in doing rolls and going up against the enemy's rolls that are attributed to their stats. It's a very technical game, and it doesn't really show you everything going on behind the scenes because there'd be a lot of UI stuff going on. A lot of rolls occur in this game. Even when you're just going out the overworld, you sometimes cross an area that has a trap, and you just, miss it. But there's one there because everyone says, perception check failed, perception check failed, perception check failed, perception check failed. And you get a little bit worried. You're like, what's going on here? What's going on? What's going to kill me here? So
you're talking other players in the world are failing their perception checks, and
yes.
it's like in the dialogue box it's saying that or whatever. That's fine.
Yes. So something's going on.
Talk to me, because this game is cross play, cross progression, all the cross everything.
Yes.
So you can bring your saves everywhere, you can jump into other people's games and so forth. Tell me how that works, because this is a massive RPG, a lot of choices get made, a lot of dialogue, relationships forming and stuff. How does all of that work?
So I should just start out by saying there is, like you said, there is multiplayer. You can do just the story campaign with an entire party made up of your friends, all with their own different classes and races and whatnot. The problem is that you have to do that right from the get-go, because what'll happen is once you start a game with, let's say, 4 characters, if somebody else that's not that player character who started it wants to join in on the game, they can, but they would have to play one of those predetermined player characters. It doesn't allow you to just jump in with whatever character you decide to create before that game or one of your own characters. You have to make it specifically for that campaign.
These are default characters that you're talking about, or are these like story characters that now player 4 who came in later can now take control of a story character or something? How does that function?
Well, I neglected to mention this part of the game, which is making your class. You have a class, things consisting of the rogue, the wizard, the paladin, the sorcerer, the warlock, the cleric, and then you can also decide your race, which can be something like half-orc, which is what I am, human, elf, half-elf, dragonborn, gnome. And then you also have subclasses within those classes. For example, I'm of the paladin, that's the Oath of Vengeance. So very righteous, kill the bad guys, make sure they get punished. Every character can be, played by another person, and they make their own. So even though you still have the, in-game party members that you can access whenever you want and recruit them as you do in the main game, you're going to be playing with however many, players are in that game. So, for example, I'm in a game that has 3 people in it, me, myself, and 2 other friends. And there's a 4th spot that we kept open because what you can do, since we have the issue of not being able to just take a random character, create him before you join the game, and then just throw him in with your already pre-planned party, what you can do is recruit mercenaries, basically, that have preset classes, preset races, all those sorts of things, and you hire them in the course of the game. So it does give you a little bit more freedom of what kind of character you want to play, rather than just playing whatever, NPC or, mainline party member like a Shadowheart, for example, is already in the game. Or, let's say, Bob, the half-elf, that Frank, your friend, who is not currently playing, had created previously. If you don't want to play that character, you can hire these, more specialized characters, but you can't, make it from the up. It's already predetermined. So you effectively have, if you aren't already a part of a game, having less customizable options to choose from, if that makes sense. It's
kind of. It's dense, and I am struggling to follow. I'm struggling to follow here, but
I might not be explaining.
I think I generally get the idea of like, there's just avenues that you can go to like sort of have control over class or maybe some race controls or whatever, but like you're just not gonna craft the character. It's just gonna be sort of like, hey, you can have these two things that you want, but everything else is just whatever we're giving you.
Exactly. Yes, that's what it is. It's hard for me to kind of put it into words, not only because I'm not the best at explaining things sometimes, but also because I played single player overwhelmingly. I've only kind of touched the multiplayer one because I do want to experience a lot of the game, the story elements, which are very interesting, and character development, rather than just, have all that go by the wayside and play with friends, which is an extremely fun experience on its own because everybody has complete control over their own character. They can go literally anywhere in the world. Don't recommend it, but you can do it because
like
you can
split up
die.
and just be in totally different instances.
Yes, because you can die. Your NPC characters can die. Like, you can revive them, but they will just straight up die. They will fail their death saving throws. They'll fall off a height that kills them, and that's that.
Huh.
And the same thing can happen to player characters. So don't recommend that. And this game can be incredibly hard because of that reason, because they do have a somewhat permadeath system. I haven't had any of my characters die yet, so I haven't had to really deal with it. But the game apparently, especially in the second and third act,
what happens there? You just reload a save and save scum your way through it
if
you want, or
you can easily do that. Yeah, so there's ways to work around it if you don't want to have to deal with it too much. But if you're a fan of any kind of tactical game, this is going to scratch your itch perfectly. Yes, see, that's why I want you to play this, Tavin, because it's a game up your alley that has all of the RPG elements that you would like from, let's say, your Mass Effects, but a lot more extensive. Because, certain party members can, die in Mass Effect games, but it's more localized to certain specific instances, not something that can just happen whenever.
Everyone's mostly safe except for like key moments, and they're usually pretty clear about it.
Exactly. And these ones, even though you do have, admittedly, that element of being able to rectify a character's death rather than just go, well, lost that guy. So it's not like a traditional permadeath system. Every single class is just so well made that there's no bad ones. Certainly there's ones that are better than others, but any run can be viable with any class. And going back to just the breadth of freedom you have to just have a completely different game just by pressing the new game button. Not many games offer that, while also just having a core combat system and RPG system that is, the thing that kind of defined what modern day RPGs are, because it is based off of Dungeons and Dragons, which is the quintessential RPG nowadays. And they were able to translate that in a perfect way to a video game format. I know you have a question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, returning back to multiplayer, when dialogue choices or like plot choices happen, how does that work in a multiplayer setting?
So if a player initiates a plot point, you have to like, when it had, like, as you can see on the screen, you have your portraits of your party members off to the left. It'll say that this player is engaging in a conversation, and you can just listen in on that. And you can even input what you think should be said, other than just using your voice, by clicking on the dialogue options as they come up, and they'll be like highlighted blue. But the person who initiated the conversation has complete control over how that flows at the end of the day. Okay. They just click and choose. And while that's going on, you can just go to some other person and talk to them and have your own interaction. Like I said, it's completely, things can go on at the same time in completely separate locations. And it kind of, like, from my understanding, like if you accept a quest, it'll add it to the quest log of your entire party. So it's not as if though you need to be in that conversation viewing it, or you need to be taking part in that conversation. It's, all just grouped together in your party.
Okay, so like if I do a quest for, if you and I are in a game together, right? Yeah. And I accept and do a quest for Billy Bob in the village or whatever. Yeah. And then like me and Billy Bob get into a disagreement. I say get fucked and I walk off. How does that affect your relationship with Billy Bob?
From my understanding, I think if you're just another player, you can go and do something different. I think. Like I said, I'm not super in depth into the RPG mechanic. Like
that would be insane. That's
yeah.
insanity. Like single player games aren't even that deep. Like when they have infinite resources.
Yes, I think that probably is how it would be able to be done. This game is incredibly, you know, artistically made. Because it's taken 6 years. It's not even a AAA title. It's more like a double A title.
Yeah.
And it's just the love and passion that went into this work, doing all of the variety. You can interact with so many different things in this game. Like, let me explain how you can approach a certain situation. I almost shared it, but I didn't want to spoil it. There's this
Go
goblin.
for it. Yeah.
There's a goblin camp. What a party of four, gnomes did. I think they were gnomes or halflings. Is they got these that you can kind of, if you go to this goblin camp like I did, you can actually, inseminate yourself with that group. Like they at least tolerate you. Maybe they'll like you. Maybe they'll defer to you due to certain things that happen in the plot. So you could go in there completely not doing a combat encounter. What this party did was they had gotten explosive barrels and they placed them the entire length of that goblin camp and then just set it off and had classical, bombastic music playing in this edit, and you just see this explosion go the entire length along the camp, killing everybody. Because it just blows up and you can't dodge it. You can reduce some of the damage that occurs, but there were so many barrels that they had collected that it was like a nuke had gone off. Or like a strafing run had occurred. And that was an entire way to deal with a situation that I went through it bit by bit, trying to break off enemy groups so I don't have this overwhelming force bringing down on me and taking them out that way. Another thing that I had done was I had encountered a group of 3 intelligent ogres. Or 3 ogres, one of them being exceptionally intelligent and a gourmand. So he really liked food, and he was discussing, I'm going to eat you and pair you with a nice apple, or whatever. I can't remember what he said.
Nice.
I was able to talk him.
Nice, fancy. I'm sorry, I'm making up sounds of the Lambs reference. Don't worry about me.
No,
keep going.
No, shut up. But what I did was I talked them down from devouring me and serving me. And so they were like, give me. They gave me a horn that I can blow whenever I want and call 3 ogres to come and fight for me. The only caveat being is they'll eat the people that I kill when they get the chance to, because they're ogres, and that's the deal. But you have this whole resource that is entirely optional if you just do certain dialogue options, and it really changes up gameplay in a substantial way. And I'm assuming they die permanently. None of them have died yet in the times I've called them, the few times. But that it's a whole other avenue you can do to play the game with your orc bosses following
is insane.
you.
It sounds unreal. Like it's the video game to end all video games.
That's why I'm saying it's one of the greatest games. People can play this for years to come, and they can get a completely new experience out of it. Like multiplayer. One of my friends was talking about, let's all run an all wizard campaign. So we're just a bunch of magic casting wizards going through this land,
Spoon.
doing crazy things. Okay, yeah, yep, that was him. Or we can all be barbarian dwarves and just run around as midgets, like that party that were gnomes or halflings that blew up entire groups of people. It is just so expansive. It's like when I played Elden Ring. It was this brand new game that just seemed fresh, that nobody had really done it before, or if they had done it before in similar ways, it just expounded on it that you didn't in ways you didn't think possible. This really goes to show you how, like, for example, early access can be good because people learned, I think, the developers learned from their experiences, and they were able to make a game as finely tuned as this and diverse as this because of just people playing it before the game officially released.
Now, I've heard some critique of how the game plays on controller. Do you have any experience in this, or do you know anybody who's been playing on controller, or has everybody in your party just been playing mouse and keyboard?
Yeah, mouse and keyboard. That's why you mentioned before you don't know how it's going to be on PS5 when it comes out. Neither do I. Because you can hold down the mouse button and walk, but I don't know how it would work with keys. Because sometimes you have to be pretty specific where you're going to avoid traps and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know.
What I've heard is, for the most part, just cycling through menus and like selecting abilities and actions and so forth. That's just kind of clunky, is what I've really heard. I haven't heard anybody complain about movement on stick or anything like that. But I have heard a lot of people be like, yo, I gotta scroll through like all of these like weapon wheels or equivalents of weapon wheels to like get this to function.
You know what? I never thought about that. Yes, that would be extremely annoying and difficult. Because you do click a lot of small little icons. You cycle through a lot of them because you sometimes have a lot of opportunities available to you for what you can do on each of your turns. And other players, I mean, other characters you have in your party are no exception to that. So it really you heavy. Yeah, I didn't think of it from that perspective. That might cause some problems going forward. I don't know how you're going to deal with that, Tavin.
We're gonna find out September 6th.
Yeah, right.
You know, after or probably like a week after that when we're done with the fucking Starfield. Here's the dream, Connor. All right, is that you know, hopefully Starfield comes out and it's great. It's a phenomenal Bethesda RPG and it blows all of our minds like Skyrim has done, like Fallout 3 had done, and so forth. But when I do finally get the chance to go back to Baldur's Gate 3, and give it the appropriate amount of time, what I really do want to do, Connor, is I want to do a 2 penny games campaign, and we have like a whole content cycle around it where we record it and stream it and put it up on YouTube and so forth, and it's just us running around just doing our thing in Baldur's Gate 3. And just having cool stories like that. Maybe it's a long running thing, it takes us years, whatever. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But that's something that I think would be really cool and really fun.
And very viable. The game makes that easy. It's not a colossal task.
God,
you just jump in the game and you do it. Oh, it's seriously just like almost nothing else. And the RPG scene, most certainly because of that alone.
Yeah.
Just multiplayer in RPGs has always been kind of a difficult thing. This game kind of makes you go, huh, it was always possible then, wasn't it? All you had to do was just, do a lot of work. Because it is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Once again, this is a AA title, AA studio at the end of the day. It's
and
not
I'm sure these devs crunched their fucking hearts out.
Well, I actually think that was one of the things they tried to not do, from my understanding.
Oh, really?
Yes. I might be wrong about that, but there were never any reports of crunching going on. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it took so long to make.
That's
I have some caveats. I have heard that the Act 1 is the best act, but I don't know if that's necessarily true, because the overall opinion of it has not wavered, even with that taken into consideration. So obviously, whatever it is they have in store for me later on in the game, it's not going to get tiring. And I am not tired of this game by any means.
The hype is just unreal for this game right now, and it kind of caught everybody off guard. Like, nobody was looking at this game as anything special. We all knew it was going to be good, but I think a lot of people kind of dismissed it as just some nerdy RPG type thing. And it's just totally caught the world by storm right now. And I mean, it received PC Gamer, who does 100-point scale, so their reviews are 67, 54, 88, wherever. They gave it a 97, which is their highest score in 16 years or something like that.
Yes.
Fucking nuts.
I think this will be Game of the Year. I think it's almost undeniable at this point, because Tears of the Kingdom is, we did the review on it. It's a masterpiece. Well, at least me and Phil think so. It took what made Breath of the Wild good and just added on extra features to make it better. But this game, at the end of the day, is entirely fresh and new, which is, at the end of the day, if you like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, you're going to be getting even though a better experience, a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild experience. This one is, you have to experience it. Every gamer has to experience it. And experience it to believe it as well. It is just a game that will be getting a lot of attention for years to come, and that's not even including the add-ons. They could do so much with this. This is a game that I see that if they're smart, look at me walking through the fire like an idiot. If they do it smart, this game will just be, one of those never-ending games for the next 10 years. Because D&D has a long history.
Expansions and story packs and content drops. Oh yeah. One
of the things they don't even, to my knowledge, you don't even have ship, that you can control ships and whatnot. You can add that to this game. One of the settings in Dungeons and Dragons is something called Spelljammer, where you're effectively in space. I think you're in between kind of planes on floating ships dealing with, crazy monsters. That would take a lot of effort to make, a lot. Yeah. But you have this game on for 10 years and whatnot, you could just add on so much, just consistently. And I hope that they do, because this
the central design is already there. So it's just now it's just pump more content in, more story, more combat encounters, more the main central idea is already there. The core of the game is there. So and they could pump this out way quicker than obviously it took them to make the game. But the game is so big that whatever, man. This is nuts. I'm so excited, Connor. You've done absolutely nothing to diminish my excitement to get my hands on this game. If if I could just fucking tolerate PC gaming,
Mhm.
I'd be jumping in with you right now. But
Your
uh,
laptop would be probably having troubles too.
it's just such an inferior way to game. You know, it's just so
Shut up.
unnecessary. It's just so ridiculous. It's so
You're just
bougie and bourgeois
play
for
this.
no reason.
This game kind of changed that. Now, I just need to cover this real quickly because this is another aspect of gameplay aside from the more story interactive bits, the character interactive bits, and story interactive. Not bad. Sometimes you'll enter into this thing called turn-based mode. It's what you're seeing right here. It's not really. It's not for situations when there's combat, but it's situations when you enter into a room, and in this case, it's a burning house. The house is constantly, the fire is expanding. It's not just staying stagnant. So if you stay in one place, you're eventually going to be consumed by flames and die. But so if you were in the normal mode, these fires are just going to come up over and over and over and over again, and it's going to be really hard to deal with. So you have this turn-based mode where you have access to your actions like you would in a combat scenario. You can do attacks, of course, if you want to, but generally you're going to be doing spells to put out fires, spells to, teleport yourself or possibly other allies to somewhere else, cast spells to prevent you from taking falling damage, attacking, doors that you need to get through, like I did before this turn-based element started. Sometimes explosions will be going off due to traps or exploding barrels, so you have time to react to that, so it's not just going off before you even can recognize that there's an explosive barrel next to you that's at risk of blowing up. And it just allows a whole other avenue of gameplay where you're not dealing in direct combat or you're doing those things involving character interactions and rolling your checks to survive or succeed in certain activities you do in the game. But it allows you to do non-combat encounters that have to take planning. I haven't really ran into super in-depth ways that this system is used. It's generally, you gotta, just get quickly out of the burning building. The biggest issue I did here was forget the guy that I'm trying to save was prone, so he had a turn where he had to get up, and by that point, the flames had consumed his room.
God, that turn to get up is silly.
It's a whole mechanic because you can do that to other people. You can knock them prone. There's lots of different character, things that happen to you. You can have frightened. You can be charmed. You can be held in place. You can be ensnared by some kind of wooden strike. You might even have, one of the cool spells you can do is you actually you can do a roll, and if you do over 11, every single time your turn ends, you turn invisible, and you get disadvantage. It's for mages particularly, and so you're completely out of the game and only coming back when your turn comes back.
God, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait. Yeah. Oh man,
so many. You play Wizard Tavin. It's as far as a guy who likes magic, it is the most extensive magic system possible out there. That you can use spells even in RPG mechanics. If someone's lying to you, you can do detect thoughts, and then you can hear their mind, and nothing they say is hidden from you. You have to do a roll to succeed, but it's another way to play the whole insightful, decepting rogue who can basically pass. I have Asterion. He's the rogue of the game. No lock is preventing me from getting where I need to go as long as he's in my party. It is incredibly hard.
I gotta play this game.
Play some rolls. You do. You will love this game.
Fuck.
Just as much as I did. Yeah, that's why I was like,
Connor. Here's the real question for you. And now we're just we're past the critical parts of it. Now we're just talking the future here. Let's say it's pretty safe to assume at this point this is going to be your personal game of the year. I think
if it does not change, it'd be an act of God.
I'll tell you, Spider-Man 2 about to fucking kick some ass right now.
The only thing that would change my perspective of this is the really personal Elden Ring experience that I had. If an Elden Ring game came out, that's the only thing that can challenge this at this point.
What, really? You think no chance? Let's just talk RPG of the year. You think Starfield has no chance?
Okay, that's actually a game that could have a chance.
Because that's a new IP from a...
It is.
Dev studio that we know, it's just...
A dev studio that we know also failed to bring us those games that we enjoyed in the past, like Skyrim, with things like Fallout 4 and Fallout 76.
76. So, 76 being the key problem there. Fallout 4 was just kind of more Fallout, and that didn't interest us. But this is, a whole new IP with a new combat system and a new ecosystem, and everything is going to be new in that game.
It is
with a familiar sort of structure to it being a Bethesda RPG, But you know what I mean?
I get what you're saying. The issue is, as you said, Bethesda. They can make great games, but I think even if it's going to be a good Bethesda game, it's going to be what Bethesda has always given us. They don't break the mold in how RPGs work. They could, because this studio could. Anybody has the capability to. That's the cool thing about art. You can build on it. And I'm not going to use this as a way to not play Starfield or enjoy it, or say like, oh, well, it's not that great or worth playing because Baldur's Gate 3 exists. That's not even including the PC limitations or the PC advantage that Baldur's Gate has over being on Starfield, where you can't really play You can play Starfield anywhere. You can't play this anywhere, or anywhere as effectively as you would be on PC.
Yeah.
So it's kind of unfair to hold it up to that standard, but I just don't see that in this current state breaking my expectation of what an RPG can be and making me think that this is one of the best games of the year.
I think both Bethesda and Xbox know that Starfield needs to hit. Like they need it to hit.
And that's why I'm hopeful that it will hit, but I think that's like we're trying to make a game that's fun and good.
Yeah.
It's going to play it, I think, relatively safe with what makes Bethesda games good, but just making those elements especially good nowadays, which love it. I'm going to like Starfield. I think I'm going to like Starfield. I hope I like Starfield. But if we're talking about like which game leaves me with this is one of the greatest games I've ever played, this on multiplayer alone beats it, because it's one thing to play over and do all these different ways to tackle the game by yourself, but then when you did it with friends, which you can use to say, oh, like I said, all wizard campaigns, some cool element like that just makes you enjoy it a lot more. Starfield will just have that, maybe have that cool experience, but it won't be like that.
Now, Connor, leading that whole train of thought was leading into, what are the chances that of this game becoming not only one of your favorite games of all time, but your favorite game of all time?
It's not going to become my favorite game of all time. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because I don't want to spoil anything. I'll talk about it later. Pay attention to the 2 Penny Games for the continuation, the Piggy Bank, a game that we play with our other host, Phil, over what we're going to talk about that week. It might impact
this next week. You got you got something to say this next week.
I do, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, keep an eye out for that Saturday, 8 a.m.
For us tomorrow.
Yeah, but we're not doing that live, so nobody's going to see it until Saturday, 8 a.m., youtube.com/@2pennygames. Now, Connor.
Wait, so let me finish my original thought that you
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Which was, getting back on track, why it's not one of my favorite games of all time. Yeah. I like the characters a lot. They're very fun to be around. I'm attached to them. But for a game to be my favorite of all time, it has to hit like super emotionally for me. Whether that's by providing a narrative that just leaves me thinking about it, or a gameplay experience that's just perfectly tailored to me, to where it just makes me feel good and nostalgic for that first time experience, or when I'm not at that game. When I'm not playing that game currently. This game I constantly want to keep playing. I know I'm going to be playing it for years in different ways, but at the end of the day, it hasn't yet attached itself to me. Like some game like Final Fantasy VII Remake does. Like even Fire Emblem Three Houses does. Even to some degree, like Breath of the Wild does. Though
now, does it just need more time? Do you just need time to reflect?
I might need more time.
Become nostalgic for the experience?
I might, or it just might never happen. It might change based off that, but as of right now, I can't see myself caring about this game on a personal level the same way I do Final Fantasy VII Remake, or even the original Final Fantasy VII.
Interesting.
That emotional connection really matters when you're talking about your favorite game. But I will defend it.
You really
to
like
Final
Final Fantasy VII.
I do. I really do. But I will defend this game to be putting it above some of those personal favorite games of mine as the greatest game of all time, because it just does so much, and I will keep playing it for years. Other people will keep playing.
You'll say it's objectively the best game ever, but it's just not your favorites. Okay. Now, Connor, I have my list here of my top 10 right here. I'm not going to go through the full list. Okay. I'll say, Mass Effect being my favorite RPG series. The first Mass Effect game is at number 6. And then my top 5 goes like this. I think easily this game could easily crush the first Mass Effect game. My top 5 goes like this. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, got at number 5. Number 4 is God of War Ragnarok. Number 3 is Persona 4 Golden. Number 2 is The Last of Us Part 2, and number 1 is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. You know me. You know the how much I love those games and how beloved they are to me.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see this game competing in that list? Or how do you think it fares in that list?
Really quickly, repeat the last 5 again. Quickly.
Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Yes.
God of War Ragnarok. Persona 4 Golden. Last of Us Part 2. Metal Gear Solid 3.
Now you see, going back to the conversation I just said, the emotional impact, how it makes you feel, right? Those games, in that regard, mean a lot to you. Metal Gear Solid 3 especially. You love the new way God of War is done with their story and narrative. I mean, we go back to the review. We talked about it a bunch. So there's that level of Tavin. Then there's the technical level of Tavin, which comes out a lot as well. I think it's going to be considered in your mind possibly better than Smash Brothers, overtaking that one.
It's these next 4 that are hard.
Yeah, yes. 4 was...
4 is God of War Ragnarok.
God of War Ragnarok.
Which
see, that's,
I think tells the story of the greatest written character of all time. Combat is cool. Combat's good. Story's really good. But, like, I don't think it's, like, the best ever. It's just it does so many other things great that it elevates it to that level.
Yeah.
Persona 4 Golden, I think, is the best single-handed RPG of all time. But granted, very traditional, turn-based combat encounters. There's some RGM going on in it. It's a lot of grinding and levels and some Japanese weirdness to it. It's not the best-looking game ever because it's old, and so forth. But I just think it's like just the best executed version of that game to date. What's next? Last of Us Part 2, I think, is the best story ever told in video games. With the best, like, acting and performances and really stellar gameplay. And then Snake Eater does everything. It just does everything. Yeah.
It does do a lot of things for you, but you see, I don't think you'll connect emotionally to, like, the characters or the narrative the same way you will those.
Okay, yeah. All right.
See, that's the thing. I've honestly came over myself, kind of not a reawakening, but an evolution in my way that I consider what the greatest games are. For example, we do something called the Game Book Club, where we play games every single month, and then we rank them, and we have a whole list that's getting bigger and bigger. Prey is this month.
Prey is the upcoming episode. We just did Shadow of the Colossus.
Prey.
Yeah, Arcane's Prey.
Yes. Arcane's Prey. At the top of that list, I will tell you right now, is... oh my God!
God of War Ragnarok is currently at the top of that.
God of War Ragnarok, yes. See, I've kind of, and Last of Us is number 2. I think I voted. Well, let's focus on God of War Ragnarok.
Okay.
Because that's a game I would vote differently on now. Because
really?
I've come to value something more, which is the gameplay experience, how fun it is, rather than a narrative. God of War Ragnarok has an amazing narrative, but, well, first of all, the combat system, none of it's bad at all. It's not bad. Gameplay-wise, it is a good game, but it isn't, like, particularly amazing. It doesn't make you go, wow, I really want to get back to that God of War combat. You don't think that. You think of the story, which, as time has passed after that initial experience of it, whereas certain stories will stick in my head for far longer, God of War Ragnarok, despite being amazing, just did in that way. I still really like the story. It's an extremely well-made story. But when I think of, okay, now taking that and now deciding which is the best game, it's not only since it didn't do that emotional impact for me personally, which I think matters a lot to gamers, and that's intrinsically tied to the narrative, which isn't to say that, I would argue that some narratives are better than God of War Ragnarok's at the end of the day, now that I think about it. But really enjoying my time.
I don't think there is in the list of games we have currently. I don't think there is.
A better story?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I would think that, because, like, once again, technically, it's similar to my criticisms of Last of Us 2, but whereas that becomes a negative with how they handle the story, just the plot points specifically, the ones in this game, in God of War Ragnarok, are amazing. And the narrative that comes along with it, the writing, the acting, is also phenomenal. But I think less impactful than some of the other ones. Like, I would say Final Fantasy VII's remake, continuation of the story of 7, does a lot more for me emotionally, which I think is what a big part of what narratives try to do, at least from my perspective.
But arguably, that game cheats.
To how degree? To using another game? Or?
It plays off of your nostalgia. It plays off of the fact that it like the marketing lied to you. It's not a remake,
No.
or not a traditional remake in that. So it places off your nostalgia, beloved characters, and let's be honest, the original Final Fantasy VII story is not the best story ever told. Like, it's fun and it's good, and you care about the characters and stuff, but there's a lot of moments where you're like, this is not well written or well told in terms of a story. And then Final Fantasy VII Remake is working to kind of clean some of that up, and then also add another thing, which could totally fall apart by the time we get Rebirth next year.
Yeah, that's entirely true. And I understand you going away from that and saying, well, God of War Ragnarok, because of that, is better. But, I mean, the whole fact of it being not a remake, but a sequel, but in the way that they did it, really elevates that game's story. And I just care about the characters themselves a lot more than people like Atreus, or people like anybody connected to, even Kratos to some degree. Though Kratos is definitely the best, character in that game. A lot of the other ones just don't really stick in my mind. Thor might have done so more, but they got rid of him and overall had him in so little. And Odin was a very cool character, very fun, memorable character, but not one that I, found even after all the bad stuff he did, it never really made me feel like that personal hate you have for a villain like that. He was a bad guy, a particularly bad one, but not anything that was super substantial as far as a villain goes. He's not one who, like Sephiroth, for example, dominates his scenes. That's the big thing with him. Also, he's pretty nice looking. But aside from that, he has his presence alone makes everything about him and basically everything else also just irrelevant. The strength of the characters, any attachment they have that might make them be better, stronger people. With Aerith dying, just being completely canceled out, he just does a lot more in a surprising way. Whereas Odin kind of develops into I'm the bad guy, the evil tyrant, that kind of archetype.
Yeah.
Even though it does have a cool aspect of him, admiring wisdom, valuing that, and just wanting to know, this desire to know. Interesting element to him because he's a very good villain. But those kinds of things, when I think of what means the most to me, plus factoring in gameplay, which the whole other avenue with 7 Remake, I absolutely adore. I love the combat system of 7 Remake. It's one of my favorite action ones that I've done recently. So that combined with the story, which arguably God of War Ragnarok is
don't get me wrong, 7 Remake has the best action RPG combat probably ever.
Yeah, it has amazing ones. And that also is the other thing that really kind of elevates it a lot farther, because I've prioritized liking those gameplay elements, which to your list, I think trumps pretty much most of those, every single one of those games you talked about. But combined with the aspect of what you like about those stories, you being Tavin, I just can't see really God of War Ragnarok or Persona or Last of Us or, of course, Metal Gear Solid 3 overreaching that in your mind. But I think even though you have a love for Super Smash Brothers, you'll recognize for how technically this game is amazing. Gameplay-wise, it is amazing. And even though it doesn't really have that narrative draw that you usually desire from some of those other games, it will overreach Smash Brothers. But I don't think that element of it will beat the other ones that you put over yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. As a side note, I disagree with everything you said about villains and characters in comparison to FF7 and God of War.
You see, here's the thing. I would have, with the piggyback, right? I would have fought pretty hard to not put God of War Ragnarok there. Honestly, I would put it at the Game Club. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking. See, right now, what I would do if I was making my list, which is irrelevant because it's the Two Pennies list, not my list.
Let me go ahead and bring it up so people can see what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And then we got to get back. Here we go. Hold on, 2 seconds. Maybe this.
This became a tangent.
Yeah. We're on a tangent here, but this is a good conversation, and I don't want to take away from it. Here we go. Let me get this going.
I have it for myself now,
just so that people can look at it. There we go. You can kind of look at it. That works well enough right there. So go ahead.
Okay, I'd probably put God of War Ragnarok under Yakuza.
Okay. You're not even being as dramatic as I thought you were going to be.
Oh,
okay.
No.
Oh, okay.
God of War is an amazing game.
I hard disagree. You also wanted Yakuza 0 over Hades, didn't you?
No.
Maybe that's changed with time or something. I feel like that's what you said in the review, but maybe it changed.
If I did not mean it at all. It was one I was considering putting over Hades, but ultimately I was like, nah, Hades is
okay, maybe it was that. Okay, but you would knock it down, God of War Ragnarok, to be the number 5 on this list, which currently, for audio listeners, I guess, there are audio listeners, the top 5 being Portal 2 at number 5, Yakuza 0 at number 4, Hades at 3, Last of Us at 2, 1 God of War Ragnarok. And you would just move God of War Ragnarok down to number 5, moving everything else up 1.
Yes. And I would like The Last of Us. I am very adored. I like the combat. I like the gameplay, and it has the obvious narrative that took the world by storm.
I would not become number 4, not 5. But anyways, continue. I'm sorry.
So at this point, I would say I would have more favorite games than The Last of Us. Multiple favorite games. I couldn't unjustify it not being at the number 1 myself because of how much I enjoyed that first game. So, even with if there's a really in that narrative and that emotional impact that a game provides and its gameplay that I like, I would, I like it. I like.
And see that this is what's crazy to me is you having a focus on gameplay and then putting Last of Us and Yakuza over God of War. God of War has better gameplay than both those games.
I can't say it with I can't say that with The Last of Us because like I said, I particularly like that gameplay. I just like the itch that it tickles for me for that game, and so for that reason,
I part of me with the first one is that the second one's gameplay is just so much better.
Yeah. Now the Yakuza thing, I just kind of inured myself to the characters more than I did God of War Ragnarok. Like I still think of the Yakuza characters as opposed to the God of War Ragnarok story characters. Though I would admit gameplay in Ragnarok is better.
Yakuza 0, I'm hesitant. I want to play more Yakuza games, but the thing that holds me back from loving Yakuza 0 as much as you and Phil did, I think I was the lowest on it, even though I was still really high on it. Is that I think I would lower it 1 position down. I'd put Portal 2 above it, and that would be it. But I've heard that the Yakuza games, if you've played one, you've played them all. And I'm like, well, all right, well, then how much can I care about these characters and how much can I care about these gameplay systems if they're going to be the same for 9 games?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And when we get to those other Yakuza games, we'll see how they compare and what that looks like. But just off of right now, I only have Yakuza 0 experience, and I really liked that gameplay. And even though I would say God of War Ragnarok is better, I think they're too similar in enjoyment level for me to say that one is enough to bring it highly above the other, especially when you have Yakuza 0 just having a lot more memorable characters, let's say.
Interesting. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been your review for Baldur's Gate 3.
Play it. It's very good.
Play it. Very good. Masterpiece. I need to do a video introducing all the shows and what this channel's about, and also breaking down our rating system, because we have a rating system, ladies and gentlemen. It's very important to us. We've been doing it since Jedi Survivor, but we just haven't really gone over it and broken it down. So we'll get to that eventually. Wow, we went a long time because we got distracted talking about goddamn God of War. Baldur's Gate 3, very exciting time. Very excited to play the game. Can't wait for it. Connor, great job on that review. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find us over at youtube.com/@2pennygames and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitch. Follow us on TikTok. All of those links are down in the description below. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Let us know how you feel about God of War. Let us know how you feel about Baldur's Gate 3 or God of War Ragnarok. How do these games relate to you in terms of favorite games of all time, greatest of all time lists? Have that discussion with us down in the comments, please. We're very, very interested to get more perspective on that. Until next time, have a great time. And Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye. Have a nice day.